show.
Thank
It's
you.
what a great show this is.
In a world that often silenced voices like hers, Viola Davis refused to disappear. Born into poverty, scarred by racism, and haunted by hunger, she rose, not because the world gave her a stage, but because she built one with her own hands. There is a power in her presence, a raw, trembling truth that shakes audiences to tears. From Broadway to Hollywood, Viola didn't just act, she testified. Every word, every look, every silence carried the weight of a woman who had survived and turned her wounds into wisdom. But behind the strength was struggle, rejection, typecasting, and moments of doubt that almost broke her. And yet she stood tall, becoming the first black woman to win the Triple Crown of acting, an Oscar, an Emmy, and a Tony. This is not just a story of fame. It's a story of faith, fire, and the fierce belief that your story, no matter how painful, deserves to be heard. This is the story of Viola Davis, the woman who turned pain into power and silence into thunder. Viola Davis was born on August 11, 1965, in the small town of St. Matthews, South Carolina, the fifth of 6 children in a family that had nothing but love and survival. Her father worked as a horse trainer. Her mother, May Alice, was a maid and a civil rights activist who marched for justice in the South. But childhood for Viola was not filled with Hollywood dreams. It was filled with cold nights, empty stomachs, and fear. When the family moved to Central Falls, Rhode Island, their apartment was infested with rats. She remembers sleeping with a plastic bag over her head to keep them away. Hunger was constant, but shame was heavier. "I was poor," she later said, "but I knew I was more than that." Amidst the pain, there was imagination. Viola found refuge in pretending, in slipping into other lives where she wasn't judged or invisible. When she performed in school plays, her teachers saw something rare, a spark of defiance wrapped in vulnerability. Acting became her escape, her rebellion against the world that told her she wasn't enough. She watched her mother fight for equality and dignity, even when it cost her peace. That strength, quiet, unbreakable, became Viola's foundation. Long before she stood on a Hollywood stage, she learned what courage looked like. A woman standing tall in the face of injustice, refusing to be silenced. From that small Rhode Island apartment to the grandest theaters in the world, Viola carried one truth: she would never again let anyone make her feel invisible. When Viola Davis walked into the Juilliard School in New York, she carried more than a backpack. She carried hunger, fear, and the echo of every no she'd ever heard. Juilliard was the temple of talent, but for a black girl from Central Falls, it felt like stepping into another planet. She struggled to fit into a world that seemed designed for others. Her voice too raw, her emotions too heavy, her skin too dark. But instead of changing herself, Viola began to master her truth. She studied classical theater, trained in Shakespeare, and learned to turn pain into art. After graduation, she didn't walk into stardom. She walked into struggle. She took small parts in off-Broadway plays, lived paycheck to paycheck, and endured countless rejections from casting directors who didn't see her beauty. She played maids, nurses, background characters, the invisible women of Hollywood. But on stage, she was undeniable. Her breakout came not from fame, but from fire, the kind that burns quietly until someone finally notices the glow. That moment arrived with 7 Guitars, August Wilson's play, that earned her first Tony Award nomination. Suddenly, people began to whisper her name. The woman who could turn silence into poetry, who could make an audience weep with a single glance. Still, Hollywood didn't open its doors easily. But Viola had learned patience. She was building something deeper than fame. She was building a voice that couldn't be ignored. In every rejection, she heard her mother's strength. In every stage light, she saw her future. And when opportunity finally knocked, she was ready. Ready to prove that her story, and the stories of women like her, deserved the spotlight. For years, Viola Davis had been a ghost in Hollywood, always present, always powerful, but never truly seen. Then came Doubt, 2008. In a single 8-minute scene opposite Meryl Streep, she shattered the screen. Tears streaming, voice trembling, her soul bared for the world to see. When the camera cut, silence filled the room. Then came applause. Viola Davis had arrived. The industry that once ignored her now whispered her name in awe. That one scene earned her an Academy Award nomination. Proof that even a few minutes of truth could outweigh hours of artifice. Her rise continued with The Help, 2011. Playing Abilene Clark, a maid in 1960s Mississippi, she brought humanity to the forgotten and dignity to the silenced. The film made her a household name, but also stirred controversy. Some argued it softened the pain of black women's reality. Viola faced the criticism head-on, saying, "I took that role to give voice to the voiceless." Her momentum didn't stop there. In 2014, she became Annalise Keating in How to Get Away with Murder. Fierce, flawed, brilliant. The role redefined TV drama and representation itself. For the first time, a dark-skinned black woman led a primetime network series. Unapologetic, sensual, complex. Behind every award, there was a wound. Behind every headline, a lifetime of being told she wasn't beautiful enough, young enough, or light enough. Viola didn't fit the Hollywood mold. She remade it. When she won her Emmy, she stood on stage and said through tears, "You cannot win an Emmy for roles that are simply not there." It wasn't just a victory for her. It was a victory for every woman who'd ever been told to wait her turn. In that moment, Viola Davis stopped chasing the spotlight. She became it. Success can be blinding, and for Viola Davis, fame brought both light and shadow. After The Help, the world hailed her as a symbol of strength, a voice for the voiceless. But inside, Viola felt something uneasy, a silence growing beneath the applause. Hollywood had embraced her, but only on its own terms. Scripts came in, maids, mothers, survivors, always strong, always suffering. She realized she was being celebrated not for her full humanity, but for her pain. Then came the backlash. Critics and activists accused The Help of sanitizing racism, of comforting white audiences more than confronting history. Viola later admitted that she too had regrets, not about her performance, but about what the film didn't say. "I just felt that at the end of the day," she confessed, "it wasn't the voices of the maids that were heard." The pressure to represent an entire community weighed heavily. Every role, every word, every interview was dissected, as if she carried the responsibility of all black women in Hollywood on her shoulders. Fame had given her visibility, but stolen her privacy. She battled self-doubt, exhaustion, and the endless pursuit of perfection. At times she wondered if her authenticity, the very thing that made her powerful, was being consumed by the machine she had fought to enter. Behind the awards and red carpets, there was a woman searching for peace. The same girl who once dreamed of freedom in Central Falls now found herself trapped again. Not by poverty, but by expectation. And so, Viola Davis did the bravest thing an artist can do. She stepped back, not to retreat, but to remember who she was before the world started watching. When Viola Davis stepped away from the spotlight, she didn't vanish. She rebuilt. She looked inward, past the noise, and rediscovered the voice that had carried her from poverty to power. It wasn't about fame anymore. It was about freedom. In 2011, she and her husband, Julius Tenen, founded Juvie Productions, a company dedicated to telling authentic stories, especially those Hollywood overlooked. Viola no longer waited for the right roles. She began creating them. Her greatest triumph came with Fences, 2016. Reuniting with Denzel Washington, Viola delivered a performance so raw, so human, that audiences forgot they were watching fiction. It wasn't just acting, it was a testimony. That role earned her the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. And something far greater, peace. But redemption, for Viola, was never about trophies. It was about truth. She began speaking publicly about the realities of racism, colorism, and identity in Hollywood. She embraced her natural hair, her dark skin, and her journey, declaring them beautiful, sacred, and worthy of the screen. She once said, "I believe that the privilege of a lifetime is being who you are." And now, she was living that privilege fully. Her reinvention wasn't loud or glamorous. It was steady, built on purpose, integrity, and love. She became not just a performer, but a producer, activist, and mentor for the next generation. From the silence of self-doubt emerged a woman unafraid to speak. From the weight of expectation rose a leader who defined her own worth. Viola Davis had once been told she didn't fit Hollywood's mold. Now Hollywood was reshaping itself around her. In an industry built on illusion, Viola Davis made truth her legacy. She didn't just act. She redefined what power looked like on screen. By the time she reached her 50s, Viola had achieved what no other black actress before her had done: the triple crown of acting, an Oscar, an Emmy, and a Tony. But her legacy cannot be measured in awards. It lives in the faces of those she inspired. The young black girls who finally saw themselves reflected with dignity, beauty, and strength. When Viola stood on stages around the world, she didn't just thank the industry, she challenged it. She called out the lack of opportunity, the obsession with youth and beauty, the silence around inequality. Her words became weapons, graceful, powerful, necessary. Through her company, Juvie Productions, she opened doors for new storytellers, for voices that Hollywood had long ignored. She became a living proof that authenticity is not a weakness, but a revolution. Her colleagues call her a force of nature. Audiences call her real, and history will remember her as more than an actress, as a truth-teller, a builder, a mirror reflecting humanity in its most vulnerable form. Viola Davis showed the world that art is not about pretending, it's about revealing. And in doing so, she gave every dreamer permission to stand tall in their own skin and say, "I am enough." Fame may have brought Viola Davis the world's attention, but peace, she learned, had to be found within. In interviews, she often speaks of her younger self, that little girl running through the streets of Central Falls, clutching books, dreaming of escape. Today, when she looks back, she doesn't see shame or struggle. She sees survival. She sees grace. Viola found stability in her marriage to Julius Tenen, an actor and producer who shared her vision for purposeful storytelling. Together they adopted their daughter, Genesis, the heartbeat of her new chapter. Motherhood, she says, became her truest role, teaching her not to chase perfection, but presence. Spiritually, Viola has become a woman of deep faith and gratitude. She speaks of prayer, therapy, and the healing power of storytelling. "You can't outrun your past," she once said. "You have to make peace with it, and let it make you whole." She learned that real success isn't measured in applause or awards, but in authenticity. In the quiet mornings when she can laugh with her family, in the courage to walk on stage with her natural hair, her scars, and her truth, and still feel beautiful. From pain, she found purpose. From rejection, she found resilience. And from silence, she created a voice that will echo for generations. For Viola Davis, the journey is no longer about being seen. It's about seeing herself clearly and knowing she is finally, completely free. The story of Viola Davis is not a fairy tale. It is not about glitter or fame. It's about a woman who rose, not because she was handed a dream, but because she fought for one. From the roaches in her childhood home to the red carpets of Hollywood, Viola carried the same truth: that dignity is not something the world gives you. It's something you claim for yourself. She turned her scars into stories, her fears into fire, and her silence into a voice that could shake the walls of the world. Every tear she shed on stage was a prayer for those still unseen. Every role she played was a rebellion against erasure. And when the curtain finally falls, her message remains: that strength is not the absence of pain. It's the courage to face it, to live through it, and to speak it aloud. Viola Davis stands today not as a star, but as a symbol of truth, of survival, of beauty born from struggle. And she reminds us all, you don't need permission to shine. You only need to believe that your story, just like hers, matters.